Back today, I'm going to be tying my multi-tool, aka the merger. I originally designed this pattern to be a mayfly emerger pattern and soon found out that it mimicked all stages of the hatch, not just for mayflies but for caddises too, just simply by changing the size and the color combination. The hook I'm using is Daiichi 1250. This is really kind of a long shanked hook. You're going to need that to accommodate this fly. You could substitute a clank hammer hook, but it's just going to be tough to get that fly on that shorter shank hook. I'm basically going to divide this up almost in half, a little bit less than half for the thorax and a little bit more than half for the abdomen. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm using this is Montana Fly Company A-Dot. You're going to want a real small denier thread to tie this so you don't overdress this fly. I normally tie this in 14s and 16s. Occasionally I'll go down to an 18 or up to a 12. But you can pretty much match most of those mayfly, caddisfly imitations on either a 14 or a 16. So the first, we're going to tie in our Flashtron. If you haven't seen my video on Instagram, I'll be posting it along with this tutorial on my YouTube channel. Basically all this is 30% light bright and 70% Antron. I came up with this in the design of this particular pattern. I use it on a bunch of different patterns now. This is what we're going to be making our bubble out of. So I'm going to tie that in real low on the bend of the hook. If you want to, you can cant this hook slightly to give you a little bit better angle. Not be taking any double takes here or editing any of this out. This is real time. And what I'm going to do is come almost all the way up to the eye of the hook and then back to about where we want to end the abdomen and start the thorax. And then I'm going to tie in my ribbing. And what I'm going to rib this with is a UTC wire. This is their extra small, if I can get a hold of it here. And for this particular fly that I'm going to tie, this is what I call my multi-purpose. So this is going to have gold ribbing, just a standard pheasant tail body, and then the thorax will be brown with brown hackle, and then I'll use natural dun CD for the rear wing and of course white for the front wing. So all I'm going to use on this is about 5 fibers, is to not build up too much of a body. And again, this is ringneck pheasant tail feather, just like you tie your pheasant tails out of. I'm going to tie this in, tip in. Get this even. So flying around now. When I wrap this body, I'm going to wrap this really flat and kind of at a 45. And the reason for that is when I come back and rib this with the wire, I'm going to rib this really straight up and down and tight. What that'll do is make this body really durable. For the most part, this is a super durable fly, even though we're using pheasant tail and CDC. And with the advent of the Amadou patch, the CDC holds up a lot better. You don't have to use shake on it or anything. If you haven't tried the Amadou patch, you got to get one. Trim that off. This will be the 7th season for this fly now, and I've just had some unbelievable fishing with this over the years on numerous different streams, water types, covering a varying amount of hatches, both caddis and mayflies, and I actually even fished it on Rock Creek outside of Missoula during the spruce moth hatch, which basically is not an aquatic moth, it's a terrestrial moth, and this fly produced real well. It was towards the tail end of the hatch too. Okay, then what we're going to do is we're going to form our bubble on the back. And if you can, just take your thumbnail and pull a few strands of that light bright out of there and a little bit of antron to kind of trail off the back of that. In the right color combo, this will also imitate terrestrials, ants, beetles, so forth. I've done real well pounding the bank midday with this pattern also. Okay, what I'm going to do is wrap back up to where we stop the thread up front, and then we're going to tie our front wing in. Originally, I tied this with CDC fluffs, but they just didn't hold up as well as I had hoped, so now I've just gone to standard CDC feathers. And what I'm going to do is take 2 of these back to back to form that front wing. The front wing serves 2 purposes. First is it mimics hatching mayflies and adds to the footprint on the water, and secondly, it works as a strike indicator in those poor light conditions especially. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to come back and do like 1 wrap in front of that wing to cock that up a little bit. We're going to do the same thing with the hackle. And this looks long. We're going to trim this anyway, so when we're done with the fly, I'll show you the finishing touch here. Okay, now we're going to wrap back right to where we stopped with our pheasant tail, and we're going to tie in our rear wing. And our rear wing will be, in this case, just standard natural dun CDC, but if I was tying, say, a tan caddis, I'd use tan CDC. Blue wing olives, I'd use more of a dun CDC, and so on and so forth, depending on what insect I'm trying to imitate. A lot of times this multi-purpose will cover a bunch of hatches without having to get too technical. They just love this fly. So when you tie these in, you want to make sure that you tie them long enough so that those tips don't just snap off. And if your rear wings aren't completely square, don't worry about it. What we're really trying to do is just form a footprint on the water. It's not so much about the wing setting perfect over the body or anything like that. We're going to trim this anyway. So now we're going to tie in our hackle, and all I'm using is brown whiting farm. This is just a piece that I cut out of a full feather. Makes it a little bit easier to handle. Tie that in. And then for our body, we're just going to use some brown superfine, and all I want is just enough to just cover the thread. So we just want a real small amount on there. Want to keep this dress as light as we can. Just roll that over and check and see where we're at. a little bit thinner. One of the best dry fly sessions I probably had in the last 10 years was on this fly last year. Okay, now on a 14, I'll usually do like 4 turns on the thorax and then 1 around the front of the wing, and on a 16, I'll usually only do 3. Try to space these as even as we can. And then again, when I get down here to the bottom, I'm going to come around the front of the wing and I'm going to do 1 full turn. And what that does, like I said, is that cocks that wing upward. So you almost kind of get that parachute kind of effect. Actually, do a couple wraps around the front of that. You really want to watch yourself that you don't crowd the eye on that, on this hook. It's really, or on this pattern, it's really easy to do. You want to leave yourself plenty of room. Finish that off. Got a little goop on my bodkin there. You want to be careful when you clip that hackle off there, you don't snip those wings off. Okay, now what we're going to do, like I said, is we're going to trim these wings. We'll trim some of this trailing shuck off the back of there too. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to 45 these. About like that, and I'm going to do the same thing with the rear wing. Try not to nick my bubble on the back there. This really leaves a nice footprint on the water. And there it is. Multitool, aka the merger. Sure and give this a try. I'll be posting some more patterns here shortly utilizing flash trim and the radical twist both. This is the headless fly fisherman. Thanks for your views and thanks for your interest.